Well, hello, everyone. You know what time it is. It is almost time to have our conversations from the C-suite. We will begin broadcasting shortly, but of course, we always want to take a few minutes to ask you to share this out to your network because we want to have a great conversation, but we don't want to be talking to ourselves. We want to make sure that others can join us for the conversation as well. So, as always, we want to invoke the power of three. Will you just take a few moments and share this out to at least three people or at least three groups and make sure that you have someone to join the conversation along with you? I'm going to take a few minutes to do it myself. And of course, as always, this is a great conversation. It's always good with libation. So make sure that you get your favorite beverage. You know, I've got my wine for the evening. Maybe you're going to do it with water or coffee or tea or whatever it is, but make sure that you are ready to have a great conversation. So again, take a few moments, invoke the power of three, hang tight and invite, and we will be back to have our conversations from the C-suite. Well, good evening, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Conversations from the C-Suite, the girlfriend's guide to being a CEO. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, and it is indeed my pleasure to join you in the C-Suite today in this episode as we're not just going to have a powerful conversation. We're going to have a magical conversation. And I'll tell you why a little bit later, but it is so great to be here in the C-Suite today. I am, of course, Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, CEO of C-Suite Women's Network, where I help women and a few good men to be the CEOs of their lives so they can be better CEOs in their business. Because here we develop strategies to help you achieve the results you desire in your business, your career, and your life. Because every woman needs to be the CEO of her life. She needs to have a seat at the table and create a seat at the table for others, because there is power when women gather. Conversations from the C-Suite is a power-packed hour that provides a platform for women to share their business and career experiences, because we know that life doesn't end when we leave the office. We want you to elevate your mindset, and we compel you to take action, because CEOs don't just wait on great things to happen. They make great things happen. Now, the C-suite in any company is where the decisions are made. It's where all the chiefs are. It's the highest of the high. And each of us has a C-suite in our lives where we make the decisions to create the life we desire and deserve. And of course, being the CEO of your life means you are, as the word suggests, executing. You are getting things done. A CEO comes up with an idea, creates a strategy, works with a team, and inspires them to execute the goal. Because wherever you are on your rise to the C-suite, you always are acting in the CEO capacity. You may be a CEO on the rise. You're aspiring to be a CEO. You're aspiring to be a business owner, to be a leader, to be that decision maker, and you're just getting started. You're in the right place. You may be a CEO on the move. You've been at the CEO thing for a while, but you still need a little bit more guidance, and you need to really take it to the next level. And then you may be the CEO. But here's the thing, regardless of where you are, even the CEO can take it to the next level. So we want to make sure that we're always pushing ourselves to truly make those CEO moves. Because here in the C-suite, we want you to feel something, learn something, but most of all, baby, you got to do something. That's right. Make those CEO moves. CEO moves are when you create your circle of influence, you educate and empower yourself to elevate you to the next level. Most importantly, you operationalize what you learn so that you can optimize your outcomes. So regardless of whether you report to a CEO or whether you are the CEO of your own company, you are always making those CEO moves. You are always the CEO of you. So let's get ready to talk about some strategies. Let's talk about how we are going to capitalize on our most powerful asset, our power of choice. That's right. The power to create extraordinary outcomes in your business, your life, and beyond. So are you ready? I hope you are ready to enter the C-suite, because we've got not only a great conversation, not just a powerful conversation, but we've got a magical conversation set up for you tonight. So I know that, we are continuing our series on relationships. We've begun this discussion on creating those circles of influence, because whether it's personal or professional, at the heart of our success is the success of our relationships. And we've already begun this discussion. And tonight we really want to get into this topic of how do we talk to men, right? Because even though we are about empowering women and a few good men to be the CEOs of their lives, we are not going to be great CEOs without men. Let's face it. Even though we're creating seats at the table for powerful women, at that table are also going to be powerful men. And that is whether it's in the boardroom or the bedroom or anywhere in between. And I know, you may have thought, like I think sometimes, do men and women speak the same language? I mean, we can be speaking literally the same language, but we are not saying the same thing. So how do we get to a point where we're able to understand each other and be on the same wavelength, be on the same planet even, so that we are able to have fruitful conversations that lead to fruitful relationships? Because the truth is, we don't speak the same language. We don't go about things the same way. That's why they're men and we're women. And this can often lead to misunderstandings, overreactions, and just sometimes plain poor communication, because we are not speaking from the same perspective. We need a woman to man translator app. I know. I'd love to have that on my phone, right? So tonight in this episode, we're going to talk with none other than the awesome Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps, who is going to help us to have magical conversations. Because yeah, it takes a little magic to understand the men in our lives sometimes, I swear. So I hope that you have your favorite beverage, because this is going to be indeed a great conversation that is going to help us to understand the men in our lives. So as I mentioned, I am so excited to have in the C-suite today none other than Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps. She is the founder and CEO of Corporate Heart Limited UK. But y'all, she brought this magic across the pond, and she is now located in California. And she has a new book out that she's going to tell you about a little bit later on in the show. But the name of her book is Who's in Charge? The Gender Dynamics of Love. And this enlightens men and women to understand the true essence and relationship value of working well together. Her passion is to put love and harmony at the top of both corporate and personal agendas in order to increase success in life and in business. She has been at this a little bit, y'all. She is a CEO. She's not a CEO on the rise. She's not even a CEO on the move. She is the CEO, and she has been doing this for over 30 years and has literally worked across the world. She's had clients in the United Kingdom and Europe, Asia, in the Asia Pacific, and now she is in the United States. And she truly helps people to transform their lives and business career success. She has had an impressive suite of clients: Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland, Innovation Norway. Y'all heard of them? eBay, Watson Wyatt Worldwide, to name a few. She's an international conference speaker. And in fact, we met at an international conference in New Delhi, India, a year ago. And it is her passion now to enable men and women alike to leverage their own unique natural potential and achieve success both professionally and personally, whether in a corporate career path or running their own enterprise. So y'all, I am so pleased to bring to the virtual stage my dear friend, my colleague, Dr. Pauline Crawford. Hello, how are you?
Hi. Hello, Stephanie. How are you? That was an amazing introduction.
Well, wonderful. Well, I was doing good till I got to the end. I guess I'd had too much wine. I put your name together. Pauline Crawford, I guess is what I was going to say. I don't know. But I've got her correct name there, and we are so pleased to have you here. So, as I always do, I always want to start with the who, the what, and the why. So tell us, who is the real Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps, and what do you do, and why do you make CEO moves?
Wow. Well, who am I? Yes, I'm Dr. Pauline Crawford-Omps, and I want to explain that name a little bit, because the Omps part only came along 6 years ago when I met my American husband.
Yes.
And so I decided that, and I think this is part of the sort of the empowerment of women, I decided to keep my name and to take his as well. So the Crawford-Omps is me combined with my soulmate, Jim, who I met, as I say, I met him 7 years ago, married 6 years ago. And now we're on this adventure, this amazing adventure. So who am I? I'm British. I'm a baby boomer. I'm passionate about connecting, about conversation. I've been a chatterbox all my life. So the idea of magical conversations has become my forte. And actually, I'm now branded and known as Miss Magical Conversations. So that, and it's interesting because I'll explain a little bit more, but I think sometimes people are afraid of the word magic, but actually magical is is something we need in our world today, because in terms of CEO moves, what I understand is that there's a kind of backward movement going on in the boardroom at the moment, I think, where men are a little bit afraid, and I'll come back to that with my research, but maybe a little bit afraid of women. So when we talk about women engaging with men, there's kind of some strange energies going on. So I would say I'm a behavioralist. So I study people's behavior, their good behavior, their bad behavior. And I always say to my clients, you know, if everything's going really well, to be honest, you don't need me. But if there's an issue, a conflict, a distress, you know, a lot of my clients, the teams are not functioning well. There's something going wrong. So it might be a serious issue. It might be something just malingering. So I love observing people. And although I've studied people officially, I think I've always been an observer all my life. And also I love to make sure that people are connecting and collaborating. But way back, you know, when I was a schoolgirl, I used to love making sure all my friends got to know each other. So it's always been a passion of mine, collaboration. So that for me is the what. It's like there seems to be a lot of disharmony in the world. So one of my favorite hashtags is world harmony. And I would say, you know, it feels like a big ask at the moment because the world is so tortured, but I'm going to go for it. I really want it to happen. So I'm in California because of my wonderful husband, falling in love with him and traveling around the world. And I think one of the things that you talk about CEO moves, sometimes you have to grab the unexpected because you don't know what's going to turn up.
Yes.
We actually met in Budapest.
Right, because that's what I was gonna say. Y'all actually met because I know you lived in Malaysia, correct? Was it Malaysia?
Yeah, but right? Before that, I was in London. Yeah, I'm a Londoner. And Jim was actually in Las Vegas, so that was not where he's originally from. But he had come to a conference in Budapest, and I came from London. And the curious thing was that neither of us wanted to go, and yet that's where we met. And it was actually on Thanksgiving Day. 7 years ago. So we're just coming up for that anniversary.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
And little did I know when I got on the plane that meeting would take me eventually to America, back to England, back to America, and then to Malaysia for 4 years. And then back here now to California. So you can never predict the magic of life.
Yes. And, you know, I love that you use the term magic because I think magic is beautiful. Like you said, a lot of people kind of get scary about it. But the thing that I love when you about the word magic and just the feeling that it invokes is that, you know, it's truly that ability to create something just beyond your imagination. I mean, you know, who would have thought you going to a conference that you didn't want to go to, him going to a conference he didn't want to go to, would create the magic of the two of you. Here you are now. Isn't that just awesome?
Well, it is awesome because we reflect often occasions when we talk about our history, you know, maybe, in this year that happened and I was on one side of the planet, he was on the other side of the planet. But there are things that happen for both of us because we're of a similar age, so we remember the experiences. But it is extraordinary. And I love the thing about magic. I learned recently that to stop our brains going a bit doolally, there were two things that make us really work hard: is magic and juggling. So when you watch a juggling, a very difficult juggler, your brain is trying to work out how does that work. The same with magic. Something is really the magician is really making something unbelievable believable. Our brain is actually sparked, and it allegedly, this was some research somebody told me, it'll actually help us not get dementia. So always useful to know.
It's all about like working out your mind. Anything that, you know, allows you to stretch your mind, because that's one thing I love about, you know, making CEO moves myself, you know, is always discovering things, learn something, feel something, do something. And I feel, you know, that as long as we are able to do that, where we're always feel the beauty in the world. We're able to learn something new and then do something, that keeps our minds engaged. It keeps our minds focused. And, it's our mind is like a muscle. I don't think you can call a brain. It's not technically a muscle, but it works just like one. If you use it, it gets stronger. If you don't, you have atrophy in your brain the same way you have atrophy.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I think, there's a lot of, sadly, there's a lot of people in the world who don't push out into the unknown and don't use their brain in that other way. And therefore they get very stuck. And then the more they don't get out of it, they get more stuck, and so on and so on. And that's why I say with some of the traditional businesses, I think there is a degree of stuckness.
Right.
But there's an awful lot of examples now in the world of CEO moves. My favorite example is Richard Branson, who are actively doing very different things. Mm-hmm. So it's not about, it's got to be this way or the highway. It's actually saying there are lots of different perspectives.
Right.
And, we have my fascinating name, OMPS, OMPS. We often say that is open-minded perspectives.
That's cool. That's great that you can use that to connect to what it is that you do. So, of course, we met a year ago, a little bit over a year ago now.
Yeah, it was May of 2017
in New Delhi, India. We traveled to an international conference. As a matter of fact, I was looking at. I put it up. I think I had over here. I don't know what I did. I had the little plaque that we got. I was looking at it the other day, and I had it so I could show it to you. I put it, you know how that goes.
Yeah. The women
find it.
The Women Economic Forum.
Yes, but we were there, and it was such a wonderful experience. We got to meet women literally from around the world, and it was great to connect. And the one thing, let's see, that conference was, I think it's the 4th international conference where I've gone to actually speak. And the thing that I really love about going to conferences like that is you really get to see the commonalities that we all have, yet we're coming from these different cultures, literally different backgrounds, different religions, different, just all of these differences, yet there are so many commonalities that connect us. And it's always great when women gather.
Yes, and I think what was phenomenal is that there was 1,500 people there, and I suspect there was 90% of those were women. There were very few men.
Right.
And it's unusual to be in such a large conference with so many women.
Yeah.
And I noted that everybody was sitting at round tables.
Yes.
There were no lines, and the chairs, even the chairs on the stage, were oval.
Yes. It was truly a beautiful experience. And, I'm so grateful. I didn't go back this year, but I've got it on my list to either go back in 2019 or 2020, because it's great, one, to share the beautiful messages that, that we all brought, our different experiences. But it's really wonderful to just experience those different cultures and to just connect with women literally around the world.
It is. And I think one of the things that I'm really focused on is, and you mentioned it in your introduction, is, how do we get on with each other and with men, and take the boardroom to where it really needs to be. Mm-hmm. So whether that's a corporate traditional boardroom or it's your own business.
Yes.
But I think we do need to get on together, and differences can be magical, or they can be very challenging if we don't understand them. Right.
And of course,
that's really core to what I do, is that, and you mentioned as well, is it, how do we get around the table? Who's around the table, and how do we talk to each other, and how do we know how to manage different types of people? Right.
Because even though this is, focused, of course, on empowering women and helping women to be the CEOs of their lives, we have to be realistic that we have to partner with men. And I went to the Women's International Networking Conference in Rome in 2015. and there was a gentleman there. Let me see. Hope I should have written his name down, but one of the things that I was so impressed about, or just impacted me. Well, oh, here it is. Look at there. I had it. Gender equality will never be successful until men become feminists too. And it was one of the gentlemen who was on the stage. I can't believe I found my notebook and found it that quickly. But that was something that was so powerful, and is really the point, or just a pivotal, I think, aspect of the research that you're doing. Of course, I want you to share that with our listeners. But this is not men versus women. This is not us against them. This truly is men and women working together, because the statistics, in terms of the population of women around the world, the population, or the demographics of women even in the workplace, women are here to stay. We're part of the workplace. We're part of the economy. So how do we work together? So I'd love for you to just, Lord, help us figure this out, Pauline. Help us figure out, how do we talk to men?
Well, it's my passion to get and help men and women understand each other. And also, I think it's important that men understand each other and women understand each other. So that's the other dynamic of my work. And really studying gender dynamics. It's a fascinating journey, because people always make an assumption about the word gender. And interestingly enough, one of my first rules in magical conversations is not to make assumptions. Because if we make assumptions or judgments, we immediately go down one path. But for me, gender dynamics, it really focuses on the dynamic. So is it between, you walk into the boardroom, there's 4 men, 3 women, yourself, what are the types? Are all the men the same? No. Are all the women the same? No. So it's actually understanding the dynamic. Having said that, you mentioned in your intro, men and women are fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's the thing is, it's not about a battle. And as you said, it's not about them and us. But I often explain it that men in their core sort of center are a bit like a PC, and women are more like a Mac.
Yeah.
So the men have a much more straightforward driver. It's yes, no, it's either or. It's fairly straight line. Now, there's a range of men within that, and some are more masculine and some are more feminine. Some are more sort of stridently logical, and some are more intuitively verbally dexterous. So you can see a range. Same with women. So with women, with that max, so we've got this lovely circular program, which means that we can do anything, and we're multitasking, and we can talk about the kids and the boardroom and the proposal and what shall I buy, and is my mother-in-law okay, and come back to the same point. Men can't do that. So one of the core things to recognize is that if a woman is going off in a circle and a man doesn't understand it, he will stop thinking. So when she's going, oh, but he doesn't understand me. Actually, I often say to my clients, if he stopped looking you in the eye and gone somewhere else, then just stop talking. Because when we're talking to women, we understand this.
Yeah.
So women to women, we can go da 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 da. Oh yes. And if you observe men talking to each other, men will tend to talk on topic. So it'll be football, music, sex, the band, whatever it is, it'll be topic. Whereas women will tend to get more emotional, and then will weave in all sorts of things.
Yes.
Now, the magic, of course, is coming together, and it's very interesting that magic is desirable even when people don't know what it means. And when I first ever had a card which said Ambassador of Magical Conversations, and I tried it out in a serious lawyer convention,
oh my goodness,
I thought they'd all laugh at me, but these men were going, "Oh yeah, we need some of that."
Yeah.
So, and not actually knowing what it was. So coming back to men and women, I think the beauty of our differences is not understood by many when it gets into the boardroom or the business or the C-suite, unless that company has a culture which is about collaboration and diversity and mixed gender.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the great example in the US is General Motors,
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, you have a female CEO, Mary Barra, and I believe now there's 5 men and 5 women on the board. And they've actually got the accolade as the best gender equality company in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it is achievable. But if the boardroom is majority men and 1 woman or 2 women, it's always going to be a challenge, because that core driver, that PC is going chuk, 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 chuk.
Right.
And the woman's coming in with this Mac and going around in circles, and will often go off in a tangent. And unless the man is wise to that, they may see it as going off into the deep beyond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there are mechanisms to understand that, and then you get a strategy. I say, because some men are very bullet point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if they are, use bullet points.
Yeah. You know, I've always worked in male-dominated environments, and you know, I'm an attorney by trade, and particularly, you know, when I was in a general counsel role, when I was speaking, you know, or all of my communications were to non-lawyers. One of the best lessons I learned early on, and it's because I was speaking to I was the only woman, so I was speaking to all men, and I would have this great narrative about what all the support, you know, it was just all this, you know, it was still very professionally written, still lawyer like language, you know. But I remember my CEO asking, he said, you know, I need the bullet point version. And so that was one of the things that I learned to incorporate into even my writing, was I'd always have the bullet point version, and then the kind of the rest of the stuff back there for them to read in their leisure. But it's great that you point out, you know, we have to be flexible, and I always like to say cognizant of the differences. And that's what I said, you know, a lot of times when we don't understand those issues, we have misunderstandings and we overreact because we think we're being ignored, or we think we're being dismissed or disrespected, when really it's just we're speaking a different language. He doesn't understand and he's just shut down.
Well, that's right. But there are techniques. So I think one of the magical things is that if you walk into the boardroom, into the team meeting, and you can actually have a quick assessment in your mind, a bit like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. You go, okay, he's one of those. He's a bullet point man, but he's actually a word person, and she's more bullet point. And if you can then magically manage the conversation without telling them what you're doing, you will be head and shoulder above the rest of them, because they will be intrigued as to how you manage to engage them all and make it a good place to be. So that for me is obviously, I work with a lot of teams, then everybody knows what the plan is. So my gender dynamics map is a map, literally. So if I'm working with a team of 10 and they all know where they are, but you can work with one person and help them understand the problems out there so that they can manage it. And one of the things I'm concerned about is that if men are fearful, and I don't mean necessarily consciously, but with the growth of women empowerment, the Me Too movement, the sexual harassment cases, all of this, it might get into this man's head that, oh, look, I'll play safe, I'll step back. You know, can I actually talk to that woman? Or, oh no, I'm not going to advocate for her because maybe she'll think I'm coming on, whatever it is. What happens is that the gap is widening in some cases. And my belief that with my gender dynamics map and the ideas about magical conversation, the combination means you'll know who's around the table, and he can start understanding how to talk to people. And then obviously the main thing is getting everybody together. So once they all know the route, the map, they can decide on their new rules. You know, the new moral compass or whatever it is they want. Because everybody, to my mind, I'm sure you agree, everybody wants to be in a happy, loving situation. And people challenge me. I say, love in the boardroom, not sex, but love in the boardroom is a very good asset, because a loving company has good employees. They engage their employees and they engage their customers. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, because you bring a very interesting point. Because I remember reading a survey, and it's been some months ago now, but it was a survey done, at the beginning of the Me Too movement, or at the beginning of the height of the movement. Because the movement's been going on longer than the past year or so, but it's really gotten to its height with a lot of high profile sexual harassment instances, and how the conversation and dialogue has really come to the forefront. But there was a survey conducted that basically said, I think it was over 50% of men in the workplace, or in that survey, were fearful of working with women because they were afraid they were going to be accused of sexual harassment. So as you mentioned, the gap, instead of the Me Too movement, it doing what we hope, which would be to lessen the gap, bring the awareness, increase the dialogue, and actually have some action around the dialogue. It can have the opposite effect of widening the gap, because men just shut down because of fear of interacting with women in an inappropriate way, and now being accused of sexual harassment, or it being taken as something other than genuine advocacy. So, what do you think we can do to lessen that, so that the gap again instead of widening, closes, and we're able to truly have that love in the boardroom? Because again, diversity from a gender perspective, as well as from other perspectives, benefits the company, benefits the board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The team. So again, this isn't just about, hey, we want more women. This is about the authenticity that we need. So, what do we do to have a conversation that doesn't make men uncomfortable, such that they pull away, and allows us to express ourselves, them to express themselves, and real meaningful action to happen?
Well, that's exactly why I started 3 months ago, as well as doing everything else. I started interviewing men, and I just sort of felt that, reading all the news, that there was this is where the gap was, that there's a lot of women who might do programs to help men understand women. Men go off and do the programs on their own with men, but there was nobody actually asking men, so what's going on for you now? What's occurring for that man who's stepping back? So I started asking men if they would come and be interviewed, and I've currently interviewed 31 men. I've got some more lined up, and these are men from America, across America, from Canada, UK, and I've got some lined up in Malaysia as well, because and all ages, from 20 right through every decade to 70. So what I ask them is, so what's going on for you, and what do you think's happening to men? And I'll tell you, one of the fascinating things is that every single one of them say, I'm so glad you asked me this. It's like, and these are, more and more busy men, well-known men, and they go, I'd like to take my time out to do this. So that's the first surprise. It's something they haven't been invited to do before. And I think that's true of all the CEOs who are hiding. The second is that they all say, we want to be heard for who we are. Kind of, let us be that, PC core driver. And if we want to be emotional, if we want to cry, we may not cry in front of you, but if we go and cry in our cave, that's okay. But we are emotional. We're just not the same emotion as you women. And in fact, I don't really ask them about women till the end. And actually, I ask them, what advice would you give men? And usually they invite men to be more, to look at themselves in a good and positive way. So be okay about being emotional if that's how they want to be. To stand up and be both feminine and masculine within their maleness. And when I ask them, what advice would you give to women about men? the majority of them say, just let us be okay. Don't look at us as if we're a threat until proved otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that has come over for some men. And the other one, which I love, is they say, let us be emotional and don't smother us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, that's not meant as an affront to women, because I think as women, we are natural carers, nurturers. We want to take care of our men.
Right.
And we do see them as our strong partners. We also want them to be, maybe more attuned to feminism or whatever. But what we need to do is to recognize that fundamentally we're different. And to be honest, some men are not very good and they're malicious, and some women are not very good and they're malicious. So, we're not talking about those.
Right.
We're talking about when we get onto the playing field together around the table, we are different animals, if you like. I use the analogy that men are like bears and women are like birds, because men are very grounded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And women, we go off and we have this ability to fly around the room in our mind.
Right.
So when we put, if you like, the man is a straight line or a box and the woman is a curve or a ball, we need to have both together.
Right. Right.
Because as women, we've learned how to be very, we're very good at business, and we've learned how to be good at business. That doesn't mean to say we're a man.
Right. Right. And that's I read an article earlier today, or a statement, and it was just talking about this whole concept of, being successful. And the gist of the comment was that, women don't need to be like men to be successful. They need to just be good leaders. And it's not about, men or women wanting to do everything that men do, because we are different. And I think that's something that's really important to understand and respect on both sides. Men should not expect women to be like men. Hope I'm saying it right. And women, and women should not expect men to be like women. We should expect us to be as we are, but understand the differences and the compliments, and because I've done a lot of my research in, the different leadership styles, transformational, transactional, laissez-faire, which kind of follows, the whole gender discourse and how many times we characterize certain things as masculine or feminine as it relates to leadership styles. And, my theory is that impairs men and women ability to lead, because it puts us each in a box. And so if you're this way or that way, and you're the wrong gender, that's the wrong assigned gender to that trait, well, then you're viewed negatively. But it's really, and it seems like the conversations that you're having with the men support the perspective that you just need to understand the differences and not put people in a box, and let them be in the space that they're in, without making them feel bad about that space.
Well, that's right, because one of my interviewees, who was probably in his 40s, he said, I think we need to bring back the idea of chivalry. And it isn't necessarily men being the chivalrous one, but us having an authentic chivalry to each other. And must respect that, if you go back 30 years, 50 years, women weren't in the boardroom and we weren't en masse. There were some women coming in, but if you look at the big changes in the world, it's about technology, it's about entrepreneurship, and it's about women. Not because it's about women, but the changing numbers. And that it's all for the good. That's what you were saying, is that the world is shifting to a much more circular, fluid, flexible, using the elements of feminine, but we need masculine as well. So in women, you have masculine and feminine energy. It's like yin and yang. But I think we've had such a long period of very male-dominated business sectors going back, that we're still getting used to the change, and the change is so fast. people haven't stopped to have those core conversations, which is about how do we really understand each other?
Mm-hmm.
Because I talk I talk about how do we understand differences? Because if you don't understand a difference between you and somebody else, that's where you get a difficulty.
Right. And you know, I think that's true of whether it's a male, female dynamic or female, male. I mean, you gotta understand the differences so that you can leverage those and just understand where you connect and where you disconnect so that you can figure out ways to connect.
That's right. And many of the men I interviewed who are, in my terms, more intuitive, more feminine minded, but very male, they say they have as many problems with men in the boardroom as they do with women, because they want a more gentle, more intuitive, emotional relationship. Mm-hmm. And the very masculine male isn't necessarily prone to that. He's very structured and very straight line. So then there are issues between women as well. So it's like we have to take note of the changing times. And of course, layered on that, you've got the millennials as opposed to the Gen X and the baby boomers. We all have different minds. And then you have cultures, and then you have so many differences. But for me, and actually the book that I'm producing first is actually not the one you said, but that one's going to come out. It's actually called Magical Conversations, because I wanted to get the essence of where the magic comes from. It's about knowing yourself and understanding not to make judgments and assumptions, and then not getting angry and not trying to control other people. So this book is about the essence of that and some of the work on men and women. And then my Gender Dynamics of Love is going to come out in January. So that will have all the, if you like, it's more in depth about my study of bodies and physicality, biology, brains, and all of that stuff, and also about partnerships. So it all comes together. I'm using all that data and information in this, but my passion to begin with is to get people understanding that they need to get around the table, and stop fighting. Whether it's a group of men, a group of women, or mixed. And certainly in the boardroom, where there are plenty of stresses and strains about economic development, you don't want to be arguing with each other about who's right and who's wrong. You need to be working as a team seamlessly. That's my view about the C-suite. And unless the CEOs and the C-suite really get their act together, then all sorts of crazy stuff is going to happen. So we can't let that happen.
Right.
So the magical conversation is actually in a structured session. I mean, I teach people to be magical in all their conversations, but if you have a structured session, it's actually a timed session where everybody enters the room and they might have a topic to discuss, and they leave their ego outside the door. And they come to the table to focus on the topic in an open sharing. And it might be an hour and a half, 2 hours, it might be half a day, but it's to allow people to be free of the restrictions that they keep on holding on to. So whether they're a man or woman, or it's about some of the social constructs we've had about men and women. And as people learn to be in that safe space, then they become more at ease about the differences around the table.
And and it's so not interesting is not the right word, but it's powerful that you mention safe and feeling safe, and how you've talked about that in several different perspectives in terms of how important it is for people, men and women, to feel safe, women to express themselves, women to just be in the boardroom, and then men in the same way. And it's all about, I think the magic happens, if you will, is when we let those guards down, because we trust each other enough to be able to have, real, genuine conversations. And, where we're going back and forth, we're having dialogue, we're sharing, and we're not shutting down. And that's so important in the boardroom, but it's also important in the bedroom. And I use that kind of
no, absolutely.
But
the boardroom, I would say the boardroom, the bedroom, the classroom, and the coffee shop.
Right. It's so incredibly important, because we're always going to have gender dynamics. And I love that you use the word dynamics, because that means it's the movement, it's the going back and forth, the interaction. It's not stagnant, and it's not something that just kind of is what it is. It's something that moves and responds and reacts.
What's interesting is that one interview, I mentioned the word safe, and the man I was talking to said, "Oh, safe, that's a really female word." Which was, and this is why, for me, it's very important to listen to each other. This is why I put these interviews out. At the moment, they're on Facebook, but I'm going to turn them into evidence for Magical Conversation TV. And when he said that, I thought, no, let me listen. What's the reason? And I thought maybe safe is a much more female and feminine word than it is masculine male, because the person, whether it's male or female, who wants to go and leap off a cliff and do extreme sports, they might take care with their safety harness, but they're risking.
Right.
They're not in a safe. So safe can seem to be, for some people, too quiet, too secure, because they want a bit of, and when you're an entrepreneur, you want to take risks. So It's interesting. Words are very key. And if somebody, and my advice to people listening is that if in a conversation something starts to go wrong, is to maybe listen to the words and think, okay, maybe that word doesn't work, maybe something else does. But rather than decide it's going to block me, then unblock it. It's all about choices. You mentioned that right at the beginning. And
go ahead.
Sorry, I'm saying my passion is that the man in the boardroom or the woman in the boardroom understands the technique of magical conversation. They understand the gender dynamics around the table, and they can then get past gender. People often say to me, well, we don't want to bother with gender. I say, well, you have to until you get it right.
Right. Because, it's like ignoring the elephant in the room, even though, because, equality does not mean, what's the word?
Well, to me, it doesn't mean sameness.
It doesn't mean sameness. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. Equality doesn't mean sameness. And I think, that's the article I was talking about earlier, that was its main point, was that women don't need to be like men in order to be successful.
Yes.
We just need to be, have our own appropriate leadership styles. It's kind of the same concept. When we bridge our differences, it doesn't mean we all become the same. It's just that we have, I would characterize it, we have a common understanding that allows us to have that translator, that app, where our language, our understanding, our communication is fluid and is, in a way that enables us to at least be speaking from the same version of the dictionary as opposed to, literally speaking two different languages, and you don't have that translator.
And I think the other thing I write in my book is it's also about the experience as well as the words and the actions. It's about being tuned into, is this working or is it not working? Very simple. And some people are more tuned into that than others, but we tune in a different way. So not everybody likes conversations. I mean, we all have to communicate, but some men and some women are, see conversation very differently. So, and the one thing I think that women have definitely brought into work, into business, is life. That's what I see, is that men were much more capable of coming to work, doing the business, going home, then life took over at home. Women bring life into work because they just have to, you know.
It blends. Because I remember I did a survey of my team, and because I wanted to get to know them, and I wanted to know, I was truly trying to make an effort to avoid a one size fits all as it relates to recognition, reward, and just really truly hear from them. And I remember one of the questions that I had was, you know, what is it about is there anything in your personal life that you want me to know that affects our professional relationship? Because I recognize, because I work with a team of mostly women, and I had one man. Yeah, I just had one man on my team. And, you know, and I just know that we don't leave our home at home. We don't leave the office at the office. It goes with us everywhere. But every one of my team members gave me an answer. And it wasn't a TMI situation where they were telling me all their business. But all of the women answered that question and told me something that was relevant. And the guy said, oh, there's nothing. What happens at home is at home, or what happens at work is at work. It was something, paraphrasing.
Absolutely. And that is very, that's very normal.
Right.
For men. And then that's why, I often say to women, make sure you're talking to the box that he's in at the time.
Right.
So, if he's gone out of that box topic wise, then you can't get back in.
Yeah.
Whereas women, we can it's like knitting, we knit everything together and we go, oh yes, there's a bit there and a bit there. And it drives us mad.
Oh my gosh. Because I remember a couple of months ago, I was having a conversation, and I was talking to my honey just about, male, female relationships. And then we were talking about, I was trying to get his advice on having a conversation with my son, who's 16 years old, which is, is a whole nother breed, 16-year-old man. But basically he was kind of sharing some of the things that you're talking about, how women process, how men process. And I got so frustrated. I'm like, well, how do we communicate at all? I just don't even understand. I mean, it just got so overwhelming, because it's like it was just seemingly so much more difficult than it ought to be. And
well, you see, that's the thing that I've been studying, is that difficulty comes from difference.
Mm-hmm.
And difficult situations, but most people don't see themselves as difficult, but they all know a difficult person.
Mm-hmm.
And there are tricks and tips on how to manage other people.
Right.
And I mean, if you take the example of somebody's very visual and you use loads of auditory words, they won't hear you. So it's the same with the gender. Now, if you're trying to get a bullet point man to be very emotional, then you're on a loser.
Yeah.
But if you have to deal with him, there's a trick. Give you a little trick. If you're dealing with a difficult issue with a man, then sit beside him and put the issue in front of you, not between you.
That is so important. Because I remember, I don't know if you remember Rita. Remember Rita? She is from Finland, but we met her in India. And I just remember Rita, because Rita is in a business and her partner is a man. So it's her and her male co-owner. And I just remember her having the conversation about how they were having some discussion about something, and they were sitting across the table from each other. And she moved to at some point she moved to the other side of the table and sat next to him. And that changed the dynamics.
Yes. Well, I remember talking to her at length about the gender dynamics map, and she kept saying, oh, yes.
Yeah.
What it is, it's all about aha moments. It's about understanding how to get past a difficult situation rather than ignoring it.
Mm-hmm.
And, going back to the boardroom, it's not a predominance of masculine male, but there is that strong element of that, especially in the traditional businesses and in law, banking, some of the more traditionally male. I've had some extraordinary conversations where, men just, when they say something, you realize they just have no idea what they don't know.
Yeah.
But they don't even know that they don't know it.
Yeah.
But it's the same is true for us. So as women, I think we are in a powerful position not to be bossy or over controlling, but to actually understand, and you're quite right, is to be ourselves. If we're a more masculine minded woman or more feminine minded woman, be okay about that too. We're all women. And remember that we've got this core drive Mac machine that has lots of different programs, but we still got to be strategic when we're in the boardroom, not to be controlled by it, but to make sure that we build the rapport so the men go, hey, she's pretty useful.
Right. And you know, and you of course we're getting close to the end of the hour, and it always happens like this where the conversation is going good. But you bring up two very key points that I think is so important, and that is it's about building the relationship but being strategic and not manipulative or maniacal. Those two different kind of connotations there. But being strategic, meaning, and that's one thing about being a CEO, making a CEO move. You know, when you create those circles of influence, you're creating those relationships. When you are educating yourself so that you can empower and elevate, you've got to get to know people. You've got to get to know situations. You've got to get to know yourself. And then you got to operationalize what you learn so you can optimize your outcome. So, you know, it's truly about making those CEO moves. So, you know, women who are watching, if you are trying to communicate with either your male counterpart, your male colleague, your male boss, your male friend, male lover, whatever, it's all about appreciating the differences. Understanding that it's gender dynamics, meaning it's going to move. It's not the same. And the differences don't have to create distance if we are willing to learn, willing to listen, and willing to let men be men and women be women. Now that is not to say, you know, let the boys be boys. That has a whole nother connotation. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is to understand that we are going to be different, and that's why they're different genders, and that men don't need to be like women, and women don't need to be like men in order for us to have better relationships. But men have to understand women. Women have to understand men, and then we are strategic about how we maneuver around those differences so that we bridge the gap rather than rather than widening it.
Absolutely, and I think the key for me is, and I'm keen to get into the boardrooms of America. I've worked a lot with boardrooms in Malaysia and the UK, because people are people. And you know, we're in sensitive, challenging times, and we need to maximize how people are working together. So it's not a nice to have; it's an absolute need. And in fact, in every boardroom, my dream is that there would be an ambassador of magical conversation, somebody who naturally has that flair. So I've created a program online where I can certify people as an ambassador of magical conversations. They have a full knowledge base about the gender map, value creation, all sorts of things. But that, like we have an HR director, or you have a CFO or a CEO, you have an ambassador of magical conversations. And they, male or female, are the ones who keep watch. They keep an eye. They help everybody to be working together. But we identify it as a strength of business, not a nice to have, an absolute necessity. That's my dream. And if you can help me, definitely, I would love that.
Yes. Well, I certainly appreciate you having you on here tonight. I've been so excited about this. It was exciting when we talked weeks ago about you being on tonight, because ever since, of course, we met in India over a year ago, I've been looking for ways for us to continue our magical conversation that we had there. So I'm so grateful that you were willing to come into the C-suite tonight to share your wisdom. And just so glad that we were able to have this magical conversation, because I hope that those of you who are watching really picked up on the nuggets that she talked about. And the last thing that I want to reiterate is just, the power of having a conversation where you are sitting down at the table with someone as opposed to sitting across from the table, because positioning is just as important as your language. And when you're adversarial across, that's adversarial. When you're sitting next to, that means you are on level ground. And sometimes we have to be flexible and in our approach so that we can get to the outcome we desire. So what are your closing remarks as we wrap up this episode of Conversations from the C-Suite? What would you like to leave our listeners with? And of course, anything that you want to share with them or invite them to be a part of.
Well, I'd like to invite them to buy my new book, The Magical Conversations, and also to think about if they'd like to become an ambassador of Magical Conversations, because that's going to start live in online in December, but I'm taking applicants now. So my new website is at missmagicalconversations.com. And one of the things, missmagicalconversations.com.
Okay.
And one of the things that I really remember, my hashtag is #WorldHarmony, is to really think about how many times in the day you have a magical conversation. And this is one where there's no judgment, so you feel safe or energetic, but you feel like contributing. There's no anger around you. So you can be passionate, but not angry. And lastly, that there's nobody trying to control the outcome until everybody's ready. Those are my 3 rules. And a lot of this, there's a lot more depth to it, but just think about, is it a good conversation? Is it productive? Am I part of it? Am I contributing, and am I heard? Am I listened to? Especially as a woman, when you're with men. Yeah. And also remember that the men want to be heard and they want to be listened, but they are different to us. Yeah. So make sure you set a loving intention to be in a harmonious conversation, even if it's serious and strategic. It can still be with a loving intention.
Right. And I think that's such an important thing to remind us of, is it's all about our intention. And if we come to the table with good faith, and are clear on our intention, and do so for the purpose of creating harmony. Because I think if you come to the table to fight, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a fight, because it's going to show up in your body language, your diction and everything. But if you come to the table for harmony, then that's going to show up in your body language, in the words you use, how you engage, your positioning, and everything.
And the last one thing is to value your differences.
Yes,
as difficulty, but value your differences as what makes you a unique, beautiful human being that you are.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope do I have the website correct? I'd want to make sure that MISS Magical Conversations, or MS.
Did I get that's it right? Right. That's right. Okay, no. Yes.
Wonderful.
And I'm going live this Saturday in Las Vegas on the stage. My book is going to arrive. The Gender Dynamics of Love will arrive hopefully in January, but the program is going live. Everything is going live. So I've been here 10 months in America, and I'm ready to give birth. So it's a delightful timing to be here with you, Stephanie.
Oh, well, wonderful. I am so glad to have you on tonight. And I just thank you so much for joining me here in the C-Suite. And hopefully we will see each other again, and we won't have to cross the sea to do so. So again, thank you so much. And as always, it is wonderful to have a magical conversation with you. And thank you for everything that you're doing to help us to have better conversations in the boardroom, in the bedroom, and everywhere in between. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tiffany. Wonderful to see you.
All right. Wonderful to see you as well. All right, everyone. I just want to thank you so much for being with us here tonight in Conversations from the C-Suite. And tonight's episode was brought to you by Deciding on Joy. It is a self-help book for women who have experienced a breakup and need to create beauty from the ugliness to decide that they deserve the new life that awaits them. You can get your autographed copy of Deciding on Joy at www.decidingonjoy.com. It is also available on Amazon. And of course, we want to continue to have great relationships because we know that as a CEO, we've got to have a great team. And the first C in making CEO moves, the first move is creating those circles of influence. And our relationships, both at home and at work, all deserve our commitment to being strategical about them, setting the right intention, and acting in a way that promotes that harmony in our relationships, professionally, personally, and everywhere in between. So I just want to thank you so much for being in the C-Suite. And of course, here in the C-Suite, we want you to feel something, learn something, but most of all, y'all, you gotta do something. Make those CEO moves, create those circles of influence, educate and empower yourself for elevation, and operationalize what you learn so that you can optimize your outcome. Whether you report to the CEO or you are the CEO of your business, you are always the CEO of you. So make sure that you use these strategies that we discuss to help you to create an extraordinary outcome in your business and your life. So until next time, thank you so much for joining Conversations from the C-Suite, the girlfriend's guide to being a CEO. And of course, I am Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, your host, and it has been my pleasure being with you here in the C-Suite. So remember though, power is not in the conversation, but in your CEO moves. Don't just talk about it, baby. Be about it. But don't wait. Wait broke the scale. Now is the time, the best time to know what you know needs to be done. And as I always share with you, remember, your life is the product of your choices. Choose to be the CEO of your life. I'm Dr. Stephanie D. Barnes, and this CEO is out.